Thank you, Whitney, for reminding me to record. Yes, we're recording. What did I just ask?
Program evaluations put together.
Oh yeah, how do you think program evaluations are put together? I mean, I can tell you what I've seen, but I want to see what other people.
I think from my experience in a nursing home, we don't really have an evaluation for each program we do, but we have more the satisfaction surveys.
Okay, how is that put
kind
together?
of more, what?
How is that put together, a satisfaction survey?
It's just a survey that goes out to families, and it's just once a year, and either they fill it out or they don't. Most of the time they don't. And then you get
who makes it and what is it measuring? Like satisfaction with what?
with everything. So dining services, nursing care, recreation, any of that. So it's everything, every department in the nursing home. And then we usually contract with an outside group to put together the survey. And it's expensive. And then I feel like we don't really get great results. Like we get this information and then like, what do we really do with it? We just have it. We're like, okay, we need to look at this, but I don't know. It doesn't work. I don't think it works.
So you contract with an outside organization who puts the evaluation together, the survey together, and so they come up with the items that are being evaluated?
Yeah, I think we choose what areas we want to evaluate, but they come up with the questions. So that you can choose what areas you want to ask questions about.
I imagine since you're contracting with somebody and paying them to do it, it's probably a little bit better, but in a lot of cases, there's no like outside group doing it, and it's just like, what do we think is interesting to know about, or what do we want? Let's do a satisfaction survey. Well, satisfaction with what? And then a group of people in the organization or one person just comes up with some things, and there's not really any rhyme or reason to why or how it's put together, right? And then, like you said, you get these results to some degree, and then you're not really sure what to do with it. Okay, well, 80% are satisfied with our food. Well, that sounds good. Okay, but what about the 30% who are not satisfied with the bed linens? I don't know.
Right. Well, and we have we're trying to reach different targets. So I think we're trying to keep it above 90%, but then there's still that percentage, like why weren't they that satisfied? And unless someone writes in a comment, which most people usually don't, or sometimes it's the people that just aren't happy with anything. Sure. I feel like it's difficult to get a real picture of what's going on.
You're always going to have those people who are never happy with anything.
Always.
So then, really good example, and thank you for providing that. So contrast that to what you just described to an IPA. And what are the differences between the two based on what you read this week? So, what are the differences between like something kind of like what Tara described and the IPA process and kind of outcome?
The IPA is more focused.
And I feel like there's more, the process of building the IPA and putting the items on it, there's a lot more, rigor behind it. Yeah, good word. There's more rigor behind it. And also there's just more direction to it, right? What else?
You can find out what you're doing too much of that's not needed or wanted.
Sure.
Of just what you're looking for, you also see things where it's like, okay, yeah, we're doing a lot of that, but it's not really wanted by our clients.
Right, that overkill section, right? So you get a lot more, way more feedback than just 80% like this and 30% don't like this and whatever. And, we're meeting our target of 90% satisfaction. You get more detail than that. Here's where you're wasting money and here's where you need to focus money, right? So,
I feel like the data is almost more, it's almost like you're getting qualitative data because of the way that the data comes back with the 4 different areas, but it's in a quantitative way, so
Mhm.
it's easier to get.
Mm-hmm.
Like it kind of tells like the story of this is what you need to chill out on, this is what you need to improve.
It does tell a story. I mean, it's more than just the 80% and their 90% hitting our target or whatever. It gives you specific and directed feedback of where to make changes. And I think that's what a lot of program evaluations that look at things like logistics and staffing, stuff like that, miss out on, is that it just says good or bad. It doesn't give you a lot of feedback of what to do next with it, type of a thing. And so I think in this sense, I'll just draw up here. Okay, so we have our little quadrants here. So this is the keep up the good work, which means you did bad in it. Oh, shoot, backwards. This is the concentrate here. And this is the keep up the good work, which means you did great. And this is the low priority, and then this is the overkill. So anything that falls over here, obviously, you need to focus your resources on that probably pretty quickly, right? Because these are things that people told you were important, but you did not perform well on them. And then things here obviously don't change because these were important and you did well. Great job. These are things that were not really important, but you did really, really well on. So like Jessica said, you're kind of wasting money there. And then these are things that are not important and you didn't do a good job on them either. So why have them? Okay, so this gives you really specific feedback on what to change up here, and up here. The things that fall in this quadrant are the must do now, and the things that fall down in these two quadrants are the when you get the chance, save yourself some time and effort and money and reallocate your resources, whether it's time or money or equipment or whatever, from these two up into working on the issues here. So what happens if everything falls in the yay, doing awesome, keep up the good work quadrant? Woohoo!
Is that when they talked about positioning that separately?
Yeah.
Is that the one you wrote?
Mm-hmm. But I took that recommendation out of other articles that talked about it. So clear all. Let's say you draw your axes at 0, right? And so when you plot everything out, you see that all of your plots come up here. All of your program factors fall up here. Well, shoot. What feedback am I going to give to the program? That's not very helpful, right? Good job. Keep it up. Don't change anything. This tells me like that the participants think that everything about this program is perfect and don't change it. Is that ever really true? No. Well, then how could this happen? No, I don't think it's because they just went down and hit 5s. Personally, in my opinion, with regards to this program that I wrote about, I think it's because they'd never had anything like this before and they were just like, yes, awesome, 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 awesome. Because they'd never had family programming before. It's always just send my kid to camp. My kid loves it. He comes home. I'm so happy about it. But there's never been something for them to go and do. And so they go and they do it and it's great, right? So they ranked everything really, really high, which it was my dissertation. It was like the second camp I'd ever designed and implemented. It's not perfect, I can assure you, right? So instead of just leaving it here saying, awesome sauce, don't change anything, I decided to kind of zoom in, redraw my axes to be right in the middle of that cloud. Well, now this gives me some feedback, right? These things obviously are not horrible because really they ranked in the keep it up quadrant. But I need to give some feedback and I need some recommendations for next time we do this camp or whatever. Well, now these are the ones that really did actually rank the lowest in their performance and the lowest in their importance, even though in reality they're ranked pretty high in those. But on the scale of highness, they were on the lowest end of that high. Okay, so these are the things that I said, next time do this, this, and this better. You can always give some feedback with an IPA instead of something that is doesn't have such detailed feedback, and you're just like, oh, well, 80% sounds good to me. Check, we're not changing anything. Well, there's 20% of the people who aren't satisfied with that. Something needs to change, right? So this can give you a little bit more specifics on exactly what it is too. Each one of those little dots is a specific program characteristic that you can address. Thoughts about redrawing this? A couple of you actually commented about it and said, can you really do that? Is that legit? Yes, it is.
I just feel like it's risky. Like it's just like a bold move.
A bold move.
Yeah, like how would you know where to put it?
You do it at the mean.
Okay.
So the mean of importance and the mean of performance, and that's where you draw the two lines. So it's not like I'm just picking random cloud, you know, in the middle of my cloud there.
What if it falls in the lower right one? At that point, then are you saying the things that you have in your programs are not important to people, so you need to like start from scratch?
Yeah. So what happens?
Like, would you even go and then break it down into the like move it, or would you at that point just say all of it, scratch it, start over?
Okay, good question. So let's draw our little picture out here. So we've got everything, right? Here's our not very important and you didn't do well. Very important, you did well. Not important, you didn't do well. And important, but
Didn't do well. Wait.
not important, but performed really well. Okay, so you're saying here, what if a whole bunch of everything falls here? Do we redraw the axes? I don't think so, because I think this is important information, right? If everything falls up in this quadrant, all of my plots or all of my points are right here. Well, they wanted all of those things in their program and you did great. Great, don't change anything. But here they're telling you they didn't think any of that was important. Well, crap. If that's my whole program and they don't think it's important, well, I'm doing a good job. I mean, it's not important to me if, okay, I have to have a scenario. Bike. What are some important things that you think that people want when they go to Fike?
In general or specific to my project?
In general.
Oh.
Clean
equipment.
towels.
Yeah.
Good equipment that is not from like 1970, right? Fitness equipment. Water, accessibility to water.
Programs. Like
Lots of
classes.
variety of activities of fitness program classes. Cute instructors, right? Okay, so if you as administrator, you're saying, come to Fike, we have cute instructors, clean towels, water, all these awesome fitness classes, blah, 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 Fike rocks, okay? And then they come and they fill out this program evaluation, they say, not important, not important, not important. None of these things are important to me. You do have cute instructors, you do have clean towels, you do have all those other things. I just don't care about any of that. Well, that would make me wonder, well, why are you coming to Fike if none of that is important to you? But, I mean, what does that mean? They're telling you the things that you're investing all of your time and resources in as an administrator are not important. That's what this is saying when everything falls down here. And I would not redraw the quadrants there. I would address those. I wouldn't redraw the quadrants for anything other than falling in the upper right, the keep it up. Because you get feedback from everything else. And that's the point of this, right? Is an evaluation for feedback to improve and refine programs. Yeah, okay. What other? I'm just reading some chats down the side. Can somebody else monitor the chat for me? It's hard for me to like lecture and go back and forth and read the chat and everything. That'd be good. You can just make people's comments for them. Say, I'm commenting for Shelly. That type of thing. Okay, other thoughts about IPA. I think IPA is really easy to understand. It's not incredibly difficult. Anybody have a hard time with it? I'm going to assume no, because nobody said that they did. Okay, let's see some other questions. Okay, a number of you asked this question. I've never seen this before. How widely is it used in rec therapy? Not much, unfortunately. So the article that you read that I wrote, and then the Kennedy one from 1985, those are the only two rec therapy specific ones I've ever found. There's that Scholl, the other one, the Scholl, David's, Glenn's one. That one is not, it's inclusive rec, but it's not really like rec therapy. It didn't go to an RT journal or anything like that. I don't know why this method is not used more frequently. I think it's so easy. That's just my opinion. But if you had to, if your boss came to you and said, we need to do a program evaluation and I have no idea what to do you think you could just be like, oh yeah, I'll just do an IPA? I made that sound really simple. Oh yeah, I'll just do an IPA. But a number of you have been involved with IPAs through my creative inquiry class. Do you think you could just do it? If somebody from Pike came to you and said, Brooke, we need to evaluate our services, you'd be like, okay. It's not too bad, right?
No, it was.
You're saying that just because
No.
it was
I
my
remember
project that you worked
we would
on.
just sit in class and kind of, we talked to people that we were making it for, kind of found out their initial, what they thought was like important kind of a thing, and then just kind of walked through different aspects and just plug and chug, and then Qualtrics did it, and then you did the rest.
Well, yeah, so we dragged it out for
Yeah.
3 semesters. It does not obviously have to take that long.
It's a very simple concept.
Well, both of you are doing IPAs for this class
Mhm.
project. So, I mean, in terms of putting that together, it's pretty doable, right?
I think the hardest part is compiling all the different elements that you want to actually evaluate.
Yeah. Okay, so good. How do we come up with that list? What does the articles say?
Sorry, Shelley is raising her hand.
So that's the most important part, in my opinion, is coming up with that list, right? Because the typical way is that some program administrator says, evaluate this, rah, rah, rah. But what's different about an IPA? That's right, it's consumer-based, okay? So that means who is making the list, contributing to the items on the list? The consumer, our clients, right? The people who are getting our services. So I would much rather want to know, from an administrator's standpoint, I would much rather want to know what my clients want and make sure that I have those things in my program and then ask them to evaluate, as opposed to just coming up with my own random list of things to evaluate, or putting together a program that I think, this is what I think veterans want. So I'm just going to build this program without ever really taking into consideration their input, right? That's how most programs come to be, right? There's somebody who has a great idea and probably a lot of money, and so they put something together, whether it's an RT program in a nursing home or in a, wherever, a community-based program or anything like that. They just put it together and then they evaluate afterwards and never have that initial input from the consumer, the client, right? So an IPA is done kind of after services are going, but the information that you get from that can help. If you were to kind of do an IPA first, I know that sounds weird, you don't have a program to evaluate, but if you were to ask your consumers what they want in a program, use that to develop the program, and then use an IPA to evaluate it, that's kind of like this whole, it's the whole the nut shit and whatever, I can't speak right now, the shebang, whole shebang, the whole nutshell.
It's isn't it like something in a nutshell?
Yeah, I totally messed that up. It's the whole thing, right? So you're building a program based on what your consumers are telling you they want, and then you're evaluating what they want. So you build that list by talking to your clients, to your consumers, asking them what they think is important in a program like FIKE. So you would talk to all the people who come in the door at FIKE. You just stand there and say, hey, what's important in your decision to come here? I like cute girls or boys. As my fitness instructor, I like clean towels. I like all those things. And you literally just write those things down, right? But then also, where else do we get other program characteristics from?
Staff.
Yeah, talk to you, the Brooks, and the other people who work there. Because we are experts to some degree, right, in our field, in our area. You guys probably have some ideas, and they're legit ideas about what makes a good fitness center, campus fitness center. So add those in. They might be the same, they might be different, but that's okay. You're building a comprehensive list. Where else? There's a third source.
Well, comparison to others. Well, specifically, I was thinking within that example of looking at other fitness centers and seeing maybe things that they focus on, like maybe they make sure that they have all these
Mhm.
cute people working there. or
I think that
whatever,
would
but-
still count as like staff and administrator perspective. But yes, I think you said it, Katie.
Of the literature.
Yeah, go to the literature, right? What has the research said is an important element in a campus rec center? Maybe there's nothing about cute instructors. Do you take that off your list? No.
Oh,
Right? Your consumer told you that's what they wanted, so you put that on there. The consumer's input has a bigger weight in an IPA than you as the administrator. That doesn't mean that your items that you think are important shouldn't be on there, but that means that you shouldn't drop theirs just because, oh, I'm trying to keep it to 20, so let's just drop some of theirs and put more of mine in there. That's not how it works, right? It's a consumer-based evaluation that's supplemented with stuff from the literature and stuff from administrators and staff. Where was I going next with that? Okay, so then once you build this list, you have to refine it down. Some people might say the same things. So if you do 20 interviews and 20 people all say the same thing about a cute instructor, you have it on your list 20 times. Okay, refine it into one item type of a thing. What do you think is a good number on IPAs in terms of items to evaluate?
I would think if you have too many, then it makes it hard to keep up with. If you have too many items, like wouldn't you think like 10 or less, maybe like, and then like each quarter, maybe you could do a different set or something, like alternate it, kind of like a QA process, like as part of your QA.
That's really interesting. I hadn't thought about that, but yeah, you could, especially in a setting like you guys where you have the same people there for long periods of time. Usually when you give an IPA, it's like in a pre-post format. So let's say somebody is coming to, I'm not going to use Fike as an example. Let's say somebody is coming to like a big Halloween event or something like downtown right now. And so you would give it to them before they go to the fun event. So either right when they show up or maybe a week before they come to the event. And then as soon as they finish, you would give it to them again and ask them to rate the performance on all those items. So when you give it to them in the pre-test format, you're saying, how important are these things? And then you give it to them in the post-test format and you ask them to rate the performance. But when you have somebody all the time and there's not, there's, you know, a big period of time between when pre and post test would be, I like that idea of doing a quarterly thing and having them rate different sets of things every time. I don't think that there's like a set number of what, how many items you can have on an IPA, but I think you always have to consider survey burden on people. And so the one that I had in the article that I wrote, I think had 20 items on it. How many is yours looking like right now? 12. What's yours looking like? Oh, dun, dun, dun. I better get on that. So yeah, 20 is a lot, I would say. Just my personal opinion, having done a lot of IPAs now. 20 is a lot, and I guess it depends on also who your people are. If you're talking about an older population or people with maybe a cognitive or intellectual impairment, you don't want to overburden them with that information, that much information as well. Okay, we build our list. We got our 20 items, and now we give it to people. We do our statistical magic and then plots everything on that grid, right? Not so bad. I like it. It's easy.
Can we talk about the statistical magic?
Okay, the statistical magic.
About how that part works.
Right. So you're calculating the means for all the importance items and all the performance items. So, I mean, each program characteristic, so you have 12, right? Is that what you said? So each one would get its own mean. So what was the average score on importance for characteristic A? The average score for B on importance. And then you have to do the same thing. What was the average score for A on performance? And then that's what plots. I mean, it really is like statistical blah, blah, blah in Excel or SPSS. And so I wouldn't explain that all out right now. But basically, you're just calculating the average scores for all your characteristics and plot. That's what plots out on the quadrants. I have a step-by-step guide. Yes, we developed it last year. I developed it last year because I had so many people. Marika taught this class last year, and when she taught them about IPA, they're like, oh, I want to do this. And a whole bunch of them did it. And they all came to me asking questions about how to do it. So I made a step-by-step guide. I'll share it with you. But yeah, I don't know. I think it's super easy. But that's just my opinion. What is your guys' opinion?
I have an opinion.
Okay, good.
I wish I would have known this existed 2 years ago when we did a finance audit of our programs in community rec, because what we found were our recreation therapy programs or inclusive programs didn't have, they came out, we don't charge for these programs, so they looked like it should have been a high charge for the amount of staff that we had on the programs. We decreased our ratio from 12 to 1 to 1 to 4. So that's pretty significant money-wise. But we still needed to prove that these programs were worth having, that they shouldn't go away. So this would have been helpful if we would have had the.
Yeah, and you can I've seen other people do this, although I don't know exactly how to do this. I have seen other people change the kind of the domains on the axes. So instead of importance and performance, it's like importance and satisfaction or things like that. And I don't know about that, but the articles that I've read, it made sense. And so you could potentially do something like that use the same process and come up with something slightly different, but still in the similar vein of being able to give really specific feedback like that. Every time I do an IPA with students, whether it's for a thesis or a project or whatever, a class project, they always say, why don't we do this more in RT? And when I did this for my dissertation and when I introduced Marika to it, she's like, why don't we learn this, how to do this for RT? It's so easy. Think of all the programs that we have seen and we know that have no form of program evaluation whatsoever. A lot, right? Yeah, even really awesome programs like Lakeshore, and they don't evaluate anything. It's a little bit scary. At the very least, an IPA can provide basic program evaluation. It's not outcomes level, that's the stuff that's going to matter for reimbursement, but at least this is giving you some feedback about how your programs are going, right? What if you thought everything at Lakeshore was going great, but then you do an IPA, like you're going to do all of a sudden, and they get not important and not doing well. We don't want this in your program, and you're doing a crappy job anyways. Holy crap. This is how we've been running the program for 15 years. But people keep coming, but maybe because there's nothing else out there for them to go and do, but maybe we can make it better.
Have you had a time when you got really bad reports in general and you had to figure out how to phrase that nicely? Or because it seems like it would be an uncomfortable thing to say, or that's, I guess, something I'm a little worried about. It's like when there are things that are not done well and they are important.
I've never had anything come out in the like in the concentrate here, I've had a couple things fall up in there, but I've never had like everything fall up in there, which would basically tell me that your program sucks. You know, I've never had anything like that. But the important thing when you give feedback on an IPA, that it's not just saying, here's all the things you're doing wrong and here's all the things you're doing right. But it's about, of course, using a professional tone when we do those things, but saying, here are the things that your participants are saying need work, and here's my recommendation of how to do that. And that's the most important part, the recommendation, right? So as a consultant, if somebody is asking you to develop a program evaluation and you choose to do an IPA or any other format, but especially an IPA, they're expecting you as the professional to help them figure out how to make it better, especially in a consulting situation. They're paying you to give them that insight. Okay, so an IPA is a really useful tool for a consultant, and it gives you an opportunity to give specific and directed feedback. But it's not enough to just say this is what's going wrong. You have to go the next step and say this is how to make it better. And I think that would go for anybody, whether you're an employee doing an IPA or a consultant, an internal or an external consultant doing an IPA. You have to do that next step of saying this is how to make it better. So those are the things where you have to kind of let that sit for a while and think about it. How could really we fix something like this? Some of these things are not easy fixes. For example, Jessica, in your program evaluation, your accessibility assessment, if you were doing something along the lines of an IPA and all of remind me what your facility is again? Yeah.
We are a forensic psychiatric.
Okay, so inpatient for how long?
It really varies. They most of them have been here about a year.
Okay.
And we work on a quarterly schedule, so it would be good for like we did an IPA to do it and then like update it per quarter, kind of like Shelly said.
Yeah, I cannot remember where I was going to go with that, but I think it had something to do with. Wait, hang on. It's that time of the semester, guys, where I can't remember. Does anybody know what I was talking about?
I think you're going to talk about how it's like hard to change some of the things that
Yes.
you get on that, like the accessibility.
Yes. Thank you. Thanks, Katie, for being in my brain today. So I am sure that some of those recommendations or some of the issues that you have with accessibility are not easy fixes, right? So it's not just going to be like, oh, let's build a quick ramp, or let's completely rip out that elevator and put in a brand new thing, or the doors are too heavy for people to open. There's a little gauge. It's like a pen with a little hook on the end of it, and you hook the hook onto the door handle and you pull it, and it tells you how many pounds of pressure it takes to open and close a door. And there are regulations about that for ADA, about how heavy doors can be for individuals with disabilities. And so once you get to a certain point of heaviness for the door, it has to have a door assist, the little push the button and it opens the door for you. Okay, so let's say all of the doors, every single door in your entire building is too heavy. Is that going to be something that's fixed like that quickly? No. And so maybe your recommendations are not just to replace all the doors. Well, yes, thank you for that golden nugget, right? Maybe that's better to prioritize which doors are most important to be fixed right away. So maybe it's the doors to their rooms, the patient rooms, and then it's the doors to the bathrooms. And then lastly are the doors to the staff bathrooms or something like that, right? Places where patients don't generally have access anyways. Okay, so we have to let it sit for a while. It's not just enough to like calculate those means and see how it plots out on the quadrant. We have to think about, okay, I'm the professional and they're looking to me to help them figure out how to fix the problems. What kind of recommendations am I going to make that make me look like I know what I'm talking about, but then that would be actual, real, usable recommendations, especially in a consulting situation where you're getting paid, for sure where you're getting paid. Just can't make these random recommendations, right?
The ADA checklist actually gives some suggestions for that.
Awesome sauce. So it does half your work for you.
Well, kind of. I mean, some of the suggestions are like, just replace the door. And it's like, well, I mean, I can't just do that. But for some of the other stuff, it gives simpler suggestions. Or
Yeah. Well, isn't it amazing that all of those resources are at people's fingertips and they just don't use it when it comes to ADA? Yeah, that's a whole discussion for another time. Okay, so let me look at my list of questions. Okay, so a couple of you commented about what if you're working with people with like severe mental illness or cognitive or intellectual disabilities or whatever, and you want them to evaluate your programs. How do you deal with that? What are some thoughts about that?
You could change like the way that you do it. Like, for example, you could evaluate it based upon how active they are or how responsive they are versus having them physically answer a question. Or you could actually ask their family member what they think, or the staff members that take care of them, if they're not able to answer those questions for themselves.
Okay. So you can use a proxy report, basically. Yes, I'm just thinking of other, yes, proxy is an option. Although that's with the assumption that, for example, in your situation, right, you're at a veterans home. That's the assumption. Then the assumption is that your clients talk to their family members about your services, and the family members would have an opinion based on what their person who lives at the home says.
That probably wouldn't be feasible, but maybe you could ask like the CNAs, the caregivers that take care of them, like how they respond, possibly the people that are with them 8 hours a day, that care for them throughout the day when we're not there, because we're only there for groups, to facilitate them, maybe.
So
or you could, go ahead.
Are you talking about creating like an RT specific program evaluation? And okay, so then getting the CNAs to help them or answer for them based on how they respond. So
An example is like for my special project or thesis, whatever, during my research, we're using the neuropsychiatric inventory, which is like based upon how the caregiver sees things. Happy Halloween. Sorry. How the caregiver sees things. And oh, that's scary. You dropped your stuff, boo. Come get your stuff. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. But it's based upon how the caregiver like assesses the person's behaviors, and not necessarily the person themselves being able to tell you. It's based upon their responses and how they observe the person engaging with that person, how they interact, and maybe adapting what you look at versus, I don't know. I'm confusing myself.
Well, I think I see where you're going, but I'm not sure that CNA would be able to answer these questions, because it's not based on behaviors. It's based on somebody's thoughts and perceptions about the program. And so that's not something that's exhibited through outward behavior, right? Other than maybe like a frown, I don't like it, or smiles, I do like it. But you're asking somebody to also tell you how important those things are in their decision to come to your facility. So for example, what are some elements that you would want to evaluate in an RT program in your home, in your veterans home?
I'd want to evaluate whether or not they participate. I mean, that's a big one. Whether or not they're motivated to actually engage, or what their responses would be. Like, for example, say it's a lower function patient, whether or not they respond so many times a week or so many times a day. Or
okay, so IPA doesn't evaluate those types of elements.
No,
IPA
so I don't know what to say. I'm confused as hell. I'm done. Sorry, y'all.
And IPA evaluates program characteristics. So these would be things like you would be asking your veterans if they think the variety of RT activities or services is enough? Is there enough variety? Or do we play bingo every single week? Okay, well, you might not say bingo every week, but your statement would be like, are there enough variety and activities in the facility? And if
I don't have a clue how to answer that one then. I don't know. I was coming off the chain with some kind of crazy response, but
you've had
that
too much
does
sugar
make
tonight.
sense. Yeah, it's just too much. Too much.
But do you guys see that those are the types of questions you would need to ask? So I don't know if proxy would work in that type of situation. The only time I could see proxy working, a proxy answer, would be if the consumer themselves are talking to the other person who's going to fill it out about what they think about the programs. It's the only time I could see proxy working. And I don't know in what situation that would work. Why were we talking about proxy?
When you're asking.
Oh yeah, cognitive disabilities, intellectual or severe mental illness, etc. Natalie, I think this was one of your questions.
What about like changing the format, how it's kind of administered or whatever? So maybe sitting down and having your different items on like flashcards and having two piles, like maybe put the ones that you think are important here or the ones you don't think are important here, or putting them in an order from most important to least, just simplifying the process and simplifying the wording too.
I definitely don't think you should do it like all at once, where it's like importance or rating importance, and then you click the next page rating performance. Like have it, like you were saying, pre-post, or just
Yeah.
I don't know, somehow separating it.
The
Because
format is huge
Yeah.
in that situation. I'll show you that when I created, oh shoot, I don't have it.
Or you can do like visual flashcards. Pictures.
We might be doing this on accident, and now that I'm hearing it, it could be cool to record for later, but like to keep a track of it more. But we keep with our teens that are nonverbal their picture on a clothespin, and then they get two options every day of what they want to do. So woodworking was really cool for a while, over interpretive dance. So a lot of teens were choosing woodworking over interpretive dance. And so we're like, oh, let's do more of that. But then we're also wondering, maybe some of the teens didn't like the instructor that much. We had a new instructor, so we switched the instructor up, and then we started getting more people back to interpretive dance. I don't know.
So what was the two clothespin thingies for?
It's a clothespin with their face on it, and they move it to what they want to do that day, the activities they want to do. So they kind of get a buffet of what they want their day to look like, and they put their face by their options. And then
so something kind of like using something like this instead of, so changing the format of things, the response option scales. I did this for my kids with autism who filled out my evaluation of the program. They didn't fill out the IPA. I made them a different version of an IPA. I didn't even call it an IPA, but a program evaluation, all picture-based. And so, you know, I know that kids with autism have difficulties in distinguishing emotions on people's faces. And so I tried to make these smiley faces as simple as possible. And then I talked to them about what each smiley emoji mean, whatever. Okay. So this is one way to do it. I mean, this might work better with different groups than others. This might be too kid-like to give to adults, but you can change it from a 7-point scale to a 5-point scale to a 3-point scale. So that's in terms of like the response options, but I imagine that there might be other areas where you'd have to take into consideration a cognitive or intellectual impairment in more than just the response options. So it would be in like the list of items, right? Are they able to understand what it is that I'm asking about? Do they understand when I say the staffing numbers were appropriate? Cognitively, can they understand, like, what is a good number of ratio from staff to participant? I mean, can most people weigh in on that? Maybe, probably. But you know, that's somebody's own personal opinion. I felt like there were not enough staff here. There were 25 kids and only one staff at this summer camp. Our community Parks and Rec had a summer camp. That's not enough. I felt unsupervised. I had a lighter in my pocket. I was going to do crazy things, and nobody could have stopped me because it was just 25 of us and one of you, okay, type of a thing. So in that situation, could somebody, I think you just have to think about whether or not they could even understand that type of thing. So what do you do if they can't? Thoughts? Maybe you just don't give it to them. Maybe it's just not appropriate. And that's okay too.
Can we have somebody like verbally like say the questions so that they can say it in a different way for me to
Okay.
understanding of it?
So verbal administration of an evaluation instead of just all on paper. So maybe you have like if you're the one who's administering it, you have the actual survey with no changes to it. And you have like this is how you can explain it. So if the item is staff to participant ratio, you have like 3 different ways that you can explain it based on how you think somebody is going to understand. If you say staff to participant ratio and they're like, huh? Then you say, what I mean is this. And if they still don't get it, what I mean is this, right? You can do that, absolutely. And that's what I did with the kids with autism. I had a little administration guide that I had all my research assistants use. And they went through and I said, you can only say these things. Don't go outside of this little box that I'm giving you in terms of how to re-explain my items, because I didn't want people just going all over the place with it, right? So I had to try to keep tight control on that. And you can do that.
So if you were thinking about asking like young kids, I think I answered my own question. If you then would need like a parent or somebody else to like speak for them at that point, like an IPA wouldn't be appropriate because then you're asking the parents their opinions. And at that point, you would just call it a parent opinion thing, kind of, a test. So at that point, if you are unable to ask the actual consumer that's participating, then it's not IPA appropriate.
Probably not. And here's the reason, is because again, you're asking them to give you their opinion on the importance of those items. And then you're asking them to rate their experience in your program on how well your program did on it. If the parent wasn't there, then they have no way to weigh in. Even if they do weigh in, it's their experience, parent experience on the performance side of things and their opinion on the importance side. So unless that kid said, this program was so great and blah, blah, and they gave you all these details about what their experience was like. And I thought it was really great that they had candy at this summer camp. And I thought it was fantastic that they had frogs in the pond and like all this stuff. And if they didn't give you that as the parent, then how could you say what your kid thought was important? I would say most of the time that parents don't get that level of detail, right, about their kids' experiences. So I don't know if proxy really could work. Here's another thing you can do, not just in terms of the response options, but I've done like a fully picture evaluation. I put it on here only to label for me what I wanted it to do. But let's say that you were having dinner as part of the program and you wanted them to rate how important that was part of the program and then how well they did it. Okay, this is a totally different instrument that I was doing. Anyways, so providing pictures is another way that you can do it, just changing up that format.
Would it be difficult to do an IPA or for them to fill out
their part, like on paper?
Nope.
You would just have to go into whatever system you're using, plug everything in, and then the statistical magic.
You just have to do all the data entry by hand. That's right.
Would you ever, or would this, I guess this would probably help more so with your like creating of the IPA, but would you ever kind of have it more open-ended and say, tell me the things that are important, and then, okay, well, how well are they doing that? Like, you do more of like an active dialogue, or would that just, you would do that as like your prep work? Because why wouldn't you just make it quantitative, because that's easier?
Yeah, so that's more part of the prep work type of a thing, the first phase of an IPA. An IPA is really a 2-phase project. Phase 1 is where you're compiling the list, and phase 2 is where you are having people rate the importance and the performance of those items. And so that just seems part of the phase 1 element. Although you can have an open-ended question on the actual survey itself that says something like, are there any factors that are important to you that we missed? List them here. And then you can have another open-ended question that says, please rate how well we did on those factors. You know, maybe they're part of your program, you just didn't list them in the IPA. And so they can tell you, well, you did a great job on this. Even though it's not on your list, you have it. Maybe next time include it on your list. Let me see if I have an IPA in my my documents here. Hang on, guys. I've done so many. I just have to find them. Hang on. Yes. All right, guys, found it. Okay, so this is the IPA actually that was given for the article that you read. And I did it in paper format. And so I just hand entered all this data. So please consider the following characteristics of a family recreation program for families with children with autism. On a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being not at all important and 5 being extremely important, please rate the importance of the following factors regarding your decision to attend this family recreation program. Right, so I wanted them to think about these factors and whether or not it influenced their decision to come to my camp. There would be a variety of activities for our family, length of the entire program. Oh, right, if it's 2 weeks long, they're probably not going to come to it, right? Because the whole family has to go, and it was in the middle of the, it's in the summer, but people have to work, right? So they take that stuff into consideration. And here's my last page. So they just went through and they circled their answers. Led to me doing a lot of, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 2, 2, 2, 2, 3, 3, 3, 3, whatever. That's the fun part. And then this is the performance portion. So I gave mine in 2 separate time points, like pre and post. So right when they showed up to my camp, they had a whole packet of paperwork they had to fill out, because of course it was part of a research project. So they had to do all these assessments and such. And then they also filled out the importance part. How important were these in your decision to come? And then at the end of it, 3 days later, they filled out the performance part. All of these same exact items. The only thing that's different are the response options across the top. While I don't have it on here, I did have an open-ended question at the bottom that said, Did I miss anything? Tell me how we did on that thing.
I think for mine, like, it'll probably be a mix of participants filling it out and parents. There's such a wide range of age and abilities and stuff. So should I?
So the parents aren't filling it out for their kids. Parents are giving you their own opinion
Right.
on those program characteristics.
So should I try to keep them separate?
Yes. And I would maybe have a little thing on there that says, are you a parent or a participant?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I guess a parent could be a participant. Could they?
So yeah, I mean they participate, but it's meant for whoever they bring. But like they will come.
As like
Let's say-
buddies, as
Yeah.
helpers.
Like let's say their kid is doing sled hockey, and then they'll get in the sled as well and play with them and experience the same thing basically.
Yeah, I'd say they're separate. They're not answering for their kid. They're a separate entry. Yeah. Good question.
Is there any basic demographics that you've seen are important to get news and collect each time, or just depends on what you're trying to do?
It just depends on what you're trying to do. I mean, think about what would be important for the program to know information demographics wise overall. If this is the only data that this program is collecting, they're not doing any other type of outcome measurement or anything, you'd probably want to know, gender, age, how many other programs they participate in, how frequently or how long they've been a participant, forever at Lakeshore, type of a thing. Trying to think of what other demographics and other settings you might ask. How long they've been an inpatient in any of those facilities. Trying to think of where all of you guys work. You guys have a lot of inpatient long-term people, so that would definitely be part of it. You don't need a ton of demographics on this. You're not splitting, when you analyze this data, you're not splitting it out like, I mean, you could, I guess, if you think that males and females are going to have wildly different perceptions of what's important or how well the performance went of it. If you think that by age, people might have different perceptions, you might want to split that out. Or, yeah, you're not going to have a ton. You just need the basics. To paint, I mean, the demographics are there to paint a picture of who's participating in your programs. And so that's the key to think about in terms of what kind of demographics you want is, what do I want to know about the people who filled out my survey and who are participating? Okay, questions. I think there was one more question. Is IPA also used by other allied health professionals? I don't really know. I'm going to go with no. Only because I haven't seen it published anywhere outside of like the marketing stuff.
I think I saw it in your
Ooh,
it was for inpatient site.
interesting. That could be helpful to you. Yeah, I haven't really seen anything, but a lot of stuff doesn't get published, so maybe they are using it, and especially for people who think, oh, it's just a program evaluation, we don't need to publish this. But man, if you were trying to build an IPA and you wanted to see what was out there in the literature, wouldn't it be handy if there were some published about campus rec type, what is important to campus rec or inpatient psych?
So
Right?
how did you decide to use it for your dissertation?
I
Where did you-
just totally stumbled across it. Actually, I think Dr. Lauren Duffy, she and I were classmates at IU, and we were sitting in the grad office, and I was like, I need a program evaluation format type of a thing. I do remember kind of like, how am I going to come up with a good one to evaluate my program? And I couldn't find anything and just stumbled across it, and she had done one before, and so I asked her about it. She did one for her master's degree, and so she gave me her thesis to read. And then Denise Anderson, Dr. Anderson here in the department, she did one about Parks and Rec faculty or something like that. And so I found that one. So within the recreation world, there's a handful of IPAs that have been published within specific to RT. One, that 1985 one, where he says retarded. He calls people mentally retarded or something like that. Pissed me off. Even though I recognize that it's like 1985 and a whole different generation, it still pisses me off that was ever okay to publish in our RT journals.
I had that in one of my questions.
Yeah.
Based off of it, I couldn't put the wording.
Yes, it is. So other than that one, I've never found any RT specific ones until mine. And so now we have a bunch of students who are doing them as theses and everything, and I'm hoping that they'll get published so that I could like compile them all and talk about how IPA would be great for RT. So if anybody's interested in doing something like that as like a little side hustle project, that's right, a side hustle project, I said that. I would be happy to help you in that for my own personal reasons, professional reasons. No, I don't think others use it. I think it's such an easy to understand, it's an easy to produce process, it's an easy to understand the results process. I don't understand why it doesn't get used more. And in terms of a profession like ours that has such struggles with evaluating anything, you know, of substance in our programs, why not use something that is simple and straightforward? Okay, any other thoughts about IPA? Or questions? That's all we got for tonight. I did not think that we would talk about this for 2.5 hours, so yeah, we're probably gonna get out early tonight, guys. Any questions about or concerns about project or anything like that? We can talk about it. Actually, Tara, I need to talk to you after class. Don't leave. Dun, dun, dun. I'm kidding. That's it. I think we can call it. Have a good night. Everybody go trick-or-treating. Woo!